Are you struggling to find ways to leverage AI in your marketing? Well, in this episode, we will show you how AI can revolutionize your marketing strategy from SEO to content creation with special guest and master marketer, David Daly.
Welcome to the show, where AI takes the flow. Lee and Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dixon, and as always, I'm joined by the guy who I believe is in the Red Keep in Croatia, Rich Swire.
Yep, I'm coming in live from King's Landing today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any dragons? Anything you've seen other than
I would be outside with a beautiful view, but a certain producer didn't like the sound of 1,000 birds chirping into the mic. So
I believe it's
a quarrel of
sparrows.
sparrows.
Of sparrows. Yeah. So
right.
So obviously we got to find a new producer because he's obviously not able to even deal with that kind of
to work around it.
Yeah,
well,
come on.
You need somebody that's going to roll the punches.
It's just a quarrel. I mean,
it's a simple quarrel. It's not a big deal.
It's not even 50 sparrows. What? All right. Yeah.
Well, speaking of quarrels, we've brought someone in here to go head to head with you today, Rich. Our guest today has over 15 years as an entrepreneur, creative strategist, and marketer that has helped small to medium-sized businesses scale their brands into multi-million-dollar companies. So, Dave Daly, thanks for joining us on the pod today.
You're welcome, Lee.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Rich has nothing else to say. That he's just
I was going to drill in.
After all
the time you guys have known each other, he's just like, man, I don't know what to do here.
I'm at a loss for words. I'm gonna enhance that relatively weak and ill-spirited intro, Lee.
Wow.
You're not even. Are you off the sauce again? You don't look yourself.
The thing I feel though is Croatia's changed you. This whole trip has been, I feel, very transformative for you. But I feel like Croatia's definitely given you an edge that you didn't have before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm coming in hard and hot. Yeah.
You're getting towards the end of your trip and the reality is setting in. You're like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I've seen the Iron Throne, and now I'm just like thirst for power. But I've known. I mean, I'll enhance that. I mean, I've known Dave for quite some time. I think it's helpful to know, I always look for him as kind of the guiding light when it comes to marketing. And I wanted to have him on the show because, talk a little bit about how AI is influencing marketing, how companies who are kind of approaching advertising, especially online advertising, is seeing how AI might influence that. And so he's like the utmost expert in this field. He's a master of the conversion funnel, and obviously has a very successful media and marketing company, works with many businesses, including ours. And so super excited to have him on the show and kind of walk through that perspective, because I think a lot of companies are looking at this and saying, hey, I've heard of how AI can help marketing, but not really sure where it has the biggest impact or what's real, what's not real. So excited to dig into it.
Yeah, and it always helps having somebody that has somewhat of a tech background because, I mean, obviously from a referral basis, it's great knowing that you can have someone you can come to as a confidant. But Dave, I mean, you really started your background, starting off as an entrepreneur like Rich and a lot of others that we've had on the podcast so far. So if you can, take us back a little bit, just give us a little history on yourself and, what kind of led you to this decision and where it brought you to today.
Led me to the decision to be
no, don't worry about that. I know that this
he absolutely, that was a horrible decision, by the way.
I was going to say, I know this has gotten to head the reason that you're here. So I don't know how many favors Rich called in on it, but I appreciate it.
Clarify which decision you're talking about.
you kind of broke off on your own to do something for yourself rather than just becoming a corporate shill like a handful of guys that Rich knows.
Oh, I can answer. Yeah. I can answer that. I've always just kind of done my own thing. I mean, I don't play well with others unless it's like a core few of other type of like-minded people. And I think that's why Rich and I get along so well. I mean, the last W-2 I had, I think I was 21. And then I was always doing my own thing. So, and it just, I've the way I was raised, I've always had a sort of survivalist mentality, and that sort of turned me into a hustler, and I learned sales and then even at 21, my job was running an internet sales department at a Lexus dealership.
Hell yeah.
Cleaning up. But like, it was always like, if you don't sell, you don't eat. Right. So, and I like that because that's like, there's no cap to that. And that led me to be on my own, because then I can control my own destiny rather than working for a salary.
Absolutely. I mean, I know you, Rich, have done a ton of projects together over the years too. If you guys have a little bit to shed some light on some of the, tech ventures you've worked on together, like I'd love to hear a little bit about it. I think it'll also bring things full circle when we start talking about, kind of this trend into where AI is kind of going in the digital marketing space, just because we've kind of touched on it here and there, but having you on for that, I think will bring, plenty of light to the listeners as well.
Yeah. I mean, I remember sitting in an office or sitting on Rich's couch when he showed me the very first V1 map demo of offers,
Yeah.
And even before that, we had, multiple, whether it was media based or, we were doing a lot of work with nonprofits and launching cool, fun campaigns that had sort of a tech online component to them. But yeah, I mean, I think, I've worked on several parts of a lot of the ventures that you've been involved with, Rich. Offers, Roof. I remember Raya back in the day, like the first version of Raya.
Yeah. I mean, I think every time that we launch a business and we're looking for a way to systematically create, lead generation, whether it be using, Google, Facebook, or content generated ads, we always kind of depended on David to put together the strategy and really kind of the system to test. Ultimately what it comes down to is you got to have your KPIs in check before you start to scale a business. So, at Offers, that was super critical for us to be able to scale to meet our demands as far as revenue growth. So when we looked at launching different kind of campaigns, I think what was really cool is we brought in a lot of content oriented stuff because we were speaking to a very I would call them like a small business, real estate, financial, anything in fintech. You're either dealing with small or very large businesses, but in our case, we were dealing with realtors, and mortgage brokers, so they're very small business owners. So you're kind of approaching it from a consumer first perspective, and that's one of the reasons why. And we've been doing that for a decade or more, and now we're looking at where AI comes into play. You're starting to see a lot of the funnel changing, where people are implementing AI to kind of address certain either weaknesses or enhancements to that kind of strategy, whether it be generating the content at the top of the funnel to whether it helps with quality or quantity. That's something to be discussed. Even with us internally, we're generating more blogs and more content than we ever have because we're using AI. So it's one of those things where we're doing the things you could have done in the past manually, but now with AI, you're actually doing it at scale. And then deeper in the funnel, AI has some influence as well. Obviously, with machine learning and things like that, you can get better and better and more targeted ads. So I think today's discussion is really for those businesses that are kind of looking at this and going, hey, where do I start? How do I implement this stuff in a way that doesn't necessarily completely change or mess up what I currently have? Or if you're starting from scratch, should I do an AI first mentality? And even we're kind of digging into that today. We don't even have all the answers, but it's definitely changed the entire game of how we're approaching it, whether it be content driven marketing or whether it be analyzing kind of the messaging and generating that messaging toward an audience. AI has definitely given us a huge advantage there. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, David, or what you're using for your clients.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's interesting about AI and what I've heard from a lot of people who don't spend as much time with it as I do, that people think that AI is going to like take over people and people's jobs, and as someone who's a creative, and I hear that from a lot of creatives, right? Like, because you see AI generated images and AI generated this, that, and the other, and copy and all that stuff. But I think the real reality here is, especially now in its instance and where it becomes really, really effective, is the only people that are going to lose their jobs are the people that aren't leveraging AI to, like you said, maximize or optimize inefficiencies in their workflow, right? Like, or more down funnel stuff, auditing conversion metrics, whether it's data analysis, or even debugging code, implementation, to make sure that your data is coming in correctly. And so, what that normally would have took, 2, 3, 4 years ago was hours, right? To produce the content, do the research, minimize all these inefficiencies, or implement, whatever code fixes that need to get implemented more down funnel if you're having data issues. All that stuff would have taken so much more time, where now it's like you can get that stuff done before lunch, right? But the other reality is that AI is very, very much garbage in, garbage out, right? You can't just go into AI and go, hey, build my website, it doesn't work like that, right? Like, you have to have some context and some knowledge to be able to communicate to the AI effectively, so that you can get in or get out what you need from it in the most efficient manner. Otherwise, you can go, rounds and rounds and rounds, sort of giving this AI bot more, context bias and stuff. So
that's it.
So that's, So I use it at every level, right? All the time. And I think that's going to be the people who, at least now, right? Until it becomes way more integrated with hardware or things of that nature, who are going to be the most,
Well, it's interesting you brought that up. I was going to say, as a creative, like, that tends to be where the biggest drop off is, right? A lot of business owners, they look at this as, an OpEx cost, or where they're going to be able to implement it to either bring in savings or generate more revenue. But the creative departments are the ones that I think have the hardest time looking at a benefit. But you kind of touched on it earlier. It's not about losing your job. It's about improving the job. Like, being able to take away those tasks that do limit the creative piece, and then say, look, now I can actually go do the things that I'm passionate about. I mean, maybe this is the pie in the sky mentality, right? But that's kind of the point of AI, is to get us back to doing the things that we enjoy doing versus being stuck doing the things that we hate doing, that gives you the burnout.
Yeah.
And it's also like, you have the ability to apply it to benefit you most, right? Like, I certainly use it in more ways than just for my clients to free up my time, so that I have more time for me, right? And I still accomplish the same thing. So you can do it that way, or you can, full throttle it and double your output, right? And you could make more money if you're using it effectively, right? So you can make it work for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think the garbage in, garbage out is a great point, because even with us, like, we're, with our SEO strategy, just internally using, kind of eating our own dog food, we're, what we do is we spend a lot more energy and time in the prompting and in the sourcing of ideas, and then leveraging AI kind of to put together kind of the first draft. And then we kind of wrap around that and manipulate it to where we feel like it communicates the message that we want, knowing full well that also optimizing it for SEO is kind of part of that process. But we want to make sure also it's a readable piece of valuable content. But I can tell you that we've published probably 500 blogs, since, January, which, ultimately we're trying to ramp up and create a nice content library that we can source and leverage for distribution, but also, optimization. But the more important thing is, we would have never even got started doing that if we didn't put AI into our process, because for a human, or a series of even multiple humans, to do that, it just seems it's way out of the bounds of what we're capable of doing. And plus, people are busy, like you said, like, they're doing other things. So everybody's leveled up, which is interesting. Everybody's leveled up in their job to be more of in a weird way, they become a manager of AI. AI is kind of your new employee, and you're saying, it's almost like if you told everybody in the world, or that has a job or has a business, and say, all right, you're just hired somebody to do your SEO, blogging, your marketing, content generation, your sales, your support, whatever it might be. Now go train them. Now, and now the mentality changes completely different, right? Like, okay, no, I'm no longer the person who have to do it. I have to now teach this person how to fish, right? And
that's exactly how people need to think of AI, as like, it's your employee, assistant, whatever, but just if you're a shitty manager, you're going to get shitty results from your employee, right?
We just lost our PG rating on this this podcast. Thanks, man. Jeez.
Is that,
no,
can I not do that?
Son of a bitch.
This is the first R-rated episode. I'm excited.
Don't worry, Myrtle, we call him Merlin. Actually, I don't even know what our producer's real name is, so we always just call him something with Mur. So it's either Murdoch, Myrtle, Merlin. But Merlin Merlin's going to beep all this stuff on. I guarantee it.
Yeah, it'll make for good shorts later.
I'll be talking and it'll just be like radio.
Right?
Yeah. He already got rid of all the sparrow sounds, so this is like child's play for him. But I agree. I mean, I think people, if they think of it that way, in fact, if I was an employee or even a manager or even a CEO of a company, I would be thinking, okay, how do I kind of create a training system? What do I want? How do I divide up the workflow and workload of my business? And then can I have AI do most of that? If not, then I need to have somebody that manages that AI to do a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And then you can set expectations so much higher, right? A lot of the things which I liked, what you commented earlier, I'll pull from that is where we talked about like all the things that you're using it for, like the additional reporting, the analysis. And if we're being honest with ourselves, all those things are things that we should be doing as a business owner or business or CEO or whatever you are in your company, but you're probably not, right? Like you're just like, it's too much work. I don't have the time.
And as a human, you have diminishing returns throughout the day as you get busier and distracted, and you get tired and you're hungry and all this other stuff, right? Yeah. So your ability cognitively to just produce at that level.
And what's crazy is when you go through the analysis, you go through the levering your data to make better decisions, you actually end up having an exponential value, right? A 10x value on that workload that you did. Like I find myself always when I go in and analyze certain things, even for example, like ad conversion or, even just doing a little bit of work there, you're like, oh, wow, I made some changes, or I see a problem that I didn't really recognize and I made the fix. And now I'm getting this dramatic return, which if I was too tired to look at that, or I didn't have AI helping me, I would be missing that, right? And I'd either be wasting.
Or it would take 2 weeks for you to get around to it versus, having some automated process with AI that allows you to do that on a consistent basis.
So I think it's like twofold. You're using AI as kind of this employee, which does initially add a lot of work for you to put together the training, right? Which is kind of what we do at Rhea, which is like, how do you train this AI? How do you input all this information into this AI so it can actually execute the tasks that you want? And then you have to almost define this wrapper of what a human or a manager would then expect coming out of that AI, and then turning that into something that was actually deliverable. Because perfect examples, like when we use it for support, AI does a lot of the Q&A. It qualifies, it asks the right questions. It might even serve up a very good answer based on its training. But there's always a chance that somebody's going to say like, well, this is what I need beyond you, and I need a human. But what we've been able to do is reduce the amount of those easy to answer tickets down, and then only allow for the really difficult ones or things that are more sensitive, like billing, to get to our support team. And now they have a lot more time and energy to actually do what support is supposed to do, which is really be proactive, deal with our best customers, onboarding, training, and not sit here and try to play, response, whack-a-mole every day, trying to respond to 1,000 tickets, right? And I think when people start to see it that way and implement it that way, it does completely change your mindset on how you both look at a business, but also look at AI.
One thing I want to touch on there for you guys too. Again, you've both seen multiple companies that you've worked alongside go from 0 to 100 rather quickly in different ways. I do think that a lot of entrepreneurs hit these different milestones where that fear, uncertainty, doubt, when it comes to delegating tasks, like it starts off as a 1, and it's like, I've got it all and I've figured out this, but like Dave, you were talking about earlier, you get to this bandwidth position where it's like, you know what, like I need to focus my time on these things. I got to go hire somebody. And then there's that fear of, do I actually hand this over and remove myself from it? Because up until that point, it's always been me. I think people and businesses are starting to really realize that that's probably the stem of a lot of the pushback on AI in these early stages is when am I going to allow myself to step away from this task and just let it take it? But I feel like we're starting to come around as businesses, and maybe you guys have seen some things differently, but with businesses that are starting to adopt AI functions in their day-to-day, it just comes back to allowing those reins to be passed and just say, okay, I can remove myself from this and focus my time somewhere else. Is that the case that you've seen?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that we're starting to see, and I'll let David comment on it, is you start internally, right? So there's minimal risk when you're doing something internally, right? You're using a tool. Maybe you're the only user. Maybe your colleague within your business is the only user. So if it messes up or it does something wrong, it's not going to impact your customer or the outside world. And also what that allows is you to understand how this black box works. Because at the end of the day, when you're dealing with a large language model, it is a black box. You can't control it. Even OpenAI or Google, whichever one you're using, doesn't fully understand how it operates. And so to create predictability, to understand how this thing is going to respond to you, you have to use it internally. Yep. And then once you feel comfortable with it, and it's kind of like being a beta tester, then slowly launching it to an external world is a lot easier, right?
Yeah. And I think it all comes down to the garbage in, garbage out mentality, right? Like, and the training. So, it's like, we'll use ChatGPT, for example, right? It's like opening a new chat with ChatGPT and giving it zero context for what you're trying to accomplish, and then expecting it to give you exactly what you need versus, having an ongoing chat that you've provided, valuable prompts to, that you've given context after context and revision and so on and so forth. So now, it's to the point where you can almost shorthand it, and it gives you real close to what you need because it knows what you're talking about now because it's been trained. So, so it's in terms of like sort of just letting go of the reins. I think, that the consumer that's looking to use AI to automate processes in their business, they need to, I sort of factor in that sort of that front load,
the more you do, the more you work with it, the more comfortable you get with it, the less that fear impacts you. I mean, that's the bottom line. Is the fear comes from just not being able to use it or not understanding how to use it. But once they understand and see how it responds, the reality is it's not going to. I would argue that if you put a human who had a really bad day, and maybe in a customer support scenario that's very rough, and then a AI, 99 times out of 100, AI is going to win when it gets to be this emotional back and forth, or you have an angry customer, right? Because ultimately what happens is the human will break down. They'll be rude or they'll be perceived as rude, right? So I think a lot of this fear is also kind of somewhat unwarranted because the same can happen with a human. I made this argument, in one of our newsletters a few weeks ago, is humans aren't perfect either. So I don't know why people hold such a high bar. When you're talking about artificial intelligence, what you're really talking about is something that mirrors how a human behaves. And if we're all thinking that the bar is perfect, then you're completely wrong. So I think that as the models get better and better, people will naturally get more and more comfortable with it. The more it permeates into our devices for the consumer perspective, the more the business user will become more and more comfortable with it. And eventually, culture will demand it. Like, the bottom line is there's no escaping it. As a business, you have to implement AI. You have to embrace it because consumers, through their use of mobile devices, through television, through all the media that they are going to be consuming, they're going to have a higher expectation of your business because everybody else is going to raise the bar. So it's just not going to be something that people can avoid. So everybody needs to honestly think about embracing it now, start using it now. I'm not saying unleash it to your end user, but getting your company and all the people within your company comfortable and understand how to build on top of it is going to be the winner. Because when it does become untenable not to have it, and when your customers or your employees or your vendors are demanding it, you'll have a year, 2 years, whatever time frame that is, of that ramp up, that comfort that you've already implemented, integrated, and are somewhat culturally okay with how it works, right? And I think, we've always talked about this. There's going to be billions of bots, right? We're all going to have multiple bots personally. We're going to have multiple bots that we work with in our companies. And the faster you get to understand how to talk their language and to manipulate it to you do the work you need to be done and what it's good at and what it's not good at, the more power you're going to have, but whether it be in your job or as a owner of a business.
Absolutely. Well, I want to do, we got a few more minutes here, and I want to talk a little bit and kind of go into a brainstorming session with you. I mean, both you have great minds when it comes to the marketing side of things and taking these applications, kind of, running with them. So from companies that are trying to improve on the SEO side, content creation, all of that, what are some ways that you think AI can step in and do that without taking the creative direction away, right? Or putting people in positions where they've rescinded too much power, and again, they're just not getting the right output because they're trying to do too much with it. How would you guys go about giving a business maybe some guidance on ways to do that at, a small scale that could become big scale at some point?
Yeah, I mean, for from an SEO perspective, I think I would, if I were using AI as somebody new to it, I would, if I've ever worked with an SEO agency or have any sort of understanding about SEO, I would speak to the AI the same way I would have, I guess. I would try to mimic the experience with an SEO expert, right? The first thing that any sort of SEO expert is going to do, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to do research. There's discovery that needs to happen. And so, and AI can help with the discovery phase, or, you could do some pre-discovery and give it some context for things that you think you may want to rank for. But I would ask AI to do some discovery and audit, what keywords are actually driving traffic, legitimate traffic to businesses like yours, or even your own business organically, and then see what it says, and then look at your results, and then think about the keywords you actually want to rank for, or you think you want to rank for, versus what the data is saying that's actually driving traffic and what people are querying. And then I would ask AI to take those high volume keywords, or those valuable keywords that aren't too competitively dense, and then help me create a content strategy around that, right? So how can I optimize my existing landing pages or product pages or whatever, but then also how can I, like you guys are doing, have a blog strategy or an article strategy that's optimized in such a way that that it's being served for these relevant key terms. The other thing I would really do is use AI to help structure the content in such a way that it has a better opportunity to fall within Google's helpful hints, which is the native in search results page, little sort of accordion tabs, and a lot of that stuff is pulled right from very SEO optimized high value pages. So and that experience is really, really valuable because it's right in stream. It's organic, but then if you tap into it, it's going to take you right to your web page, right? So if those type of things, I would sort of try to leverage AI to maximize my effectiveness, right? But you have to do it in steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's great about AI too is to add a little color to that is, you could start off just by doing an audit, real simple. You could literally just cut and paste your website, right? Just literally the text. You don't even have to worry about formatting or anything. Pump that into, ChatGPT or a bot, and essentially say, hey, here's my website. Can you tell me what's the most prominent keyword phrase that would be most likely, grabbed by a spider like a Google spider, and take those keyword phrases and then create 10 different topics that my SEO team can use to enhance those keywords. So, creating depth around something that already exists. Yep. You can also obviously go in and find out what keywords are if you have some legacy data, you can also say like, okay, here are the keyword phrases that I'm coming up on that I really want to continue to be coming up on, and do the same thing, plug it in. One thing that for beginners, especially ChatGPT does an amazing job of, and I think is probably one of the most powerful things that I use for brainstorming, is you can take a tremendous amount of text and you can ask it to summarize it. And then once it summarizes it, and you can even say like, give me the key components here. And then from there you can enhance and say, all right, from that, create me a strategy of 100 articles, And you could even say, hey, give me a baseline of writing those articles, right? If you're in that scenario where you want it to be auto-generated, depending on how much control you have. So it's really just up to the editor, if you will, is saying, hey, here's what I want to accomplish, enhance that, and brainstorm for me. Because, I think people sometimes live in a vacuum where they're like, okay, my keyword strategy around, let's say, whatever it might be. Let's say I want to come up number one under, vacation rentals, right? And I need to understand that I'm not going to necessarily win the game of vacation or vacation rentals, which is a very highly competitive keyword. But I could get a long tail, like David mentioned, a lot of long tails. And so it might be vacation rentals in Sarasota, Florida, for example. And that's the one I want to go after. And a human doesn't necessarily kind of go, okay, I think I have some ideas on some blogs, but it probably end up being very like monolithic and very vacuum because you just can't think outside the box. Maybe you're too busy. But if you plug that into ChatGPT and say, give me 10 great article ideas around this, it's going to get your wheels turning. It's going to give you some ideas. Some of them maybe you don't like. Some of them you're like, oh, I never thought about writing about what kids can do, or I never thought about, and that's really all it is. It's like a perfect companion to when you're stuck and you just go. That's how I use it almost every day is like, hey, I need a little push over the edge here. I'm working on this. Give me some ideas. And then suddenly I'm off and running. And then sometimes I want to consume a lot of information and I know I need to, but I don't have the time to read it. And I just tell ChatGPT to summarize it. So those two things, brainstorming, going from one little idea seed to a flower, and then also taking other ideas and consuming it in mass. I mean, that's like an easy no-brainer. And then following the strategy that David just outlined would be perfect.
One thing I want to touch on there too, just while we're wrapping up here, is that the biggest piece I'm pulling away right now is most people in these roles have to be so fine-tuned and pinpoint, like you were saying, on the specific strategy, and then to have to turn that off and open their brain back up to like, okay, now let me generate context in this much wider window.
Super hard.
It's super hard to do that on and off. That's why you probably have teams of someone who is specifically doing this one thing, and then you have the more open, free-flowing creative. So having kind of AI do some of those pieces, allowing them to, again, focus on the areas they're strongest is the use case we keep finding ourselves in multiple industries, which is obviously great reassuring to see.
Good,
awesome guys,
good stuff.
Well, we're gonna have to do more. We're gonna have to have you back on this, Dave. I would love to dive deeper into some of these things when Rich isn't being attacked by birds in Dubrovnik or wherever the hell. I think that sounds like a Wes Anderson film.
Listen,
birds in Dubrovnik.
Dubrovnik is a special. I just arrived today, so I was not aware of the 8 o'clock sparrow, whatever that was. It was like it was like an Alfred Hitchcock movie where sparrows were sitting on me.
Sparrows
it's like the bells are ringing.
The sky. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, just like So I should have done my homework obviously before arriving, but tomorrow. I mean, next time I'll have my act together. I apologize.
You did great, and Dave, we appreciate you being on here, man. So thanks again for the time today.
Love you guys,
and thanks to everyone for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check us out on our Substack for more content, which we will link in this episode to continue the discussion. As always, we appreciate you listening to us be seriously stupid, and hopefully we came off surprisingly smart as well. Take care, everyone.
Ready to explore.